Hello friends, thank you for joining me today. So I am filming this video in my office instead of my normal setup downstairs in the library because I started filming this video already a couple weeks ago, but in the middle of it, the microphone pack, the battery inside it, exploded in my pocket. I'm fine and my clothes were fine, but all of the audio was basically unusable and I just could not be bothered to refilm everything. I think I changed the battery and maybe started filming again, and some of the audio was fine, some of it wasn't. So I just can't use the footage that I used. So I am just scrapping all of that and refilming it here today because I can't be bothered to do the whole shebang again downstairs. It's just a lot of work. So I am going to be filming this video in my office. So enjoy the change of pace and different microphone, and let's get into the books that I read in November. The Carrow Haunt by Darcy Coates. This is a contemporary horror following a haunted house tour guide named Remy, and she's asked by one of the tour takers if she would join in a week-long stay at the Carrow house as part of a group to research the paranormal activity that happens there. And she agrees. Things start to happen pretty quickly, and they escalate, they become deadly, and they are all trapped on the island that the house sits on by this very big storm. So, unfortunately, I didn't quite manage to finish this in October, but I did spend a significant portion of Halloween reading this, which was a vibe for sure, and this was a 4.5 star. I really enjoyed it. This was like my ideal haunted house story. This is what I was hoping that The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson would be like. So if you were also disappointed in Haunting of Hill House and wanted something scarier, then maybe try this. It's fairly plot-driven with lots of tension, but still has compelling and unique characters. You learn all about the house right up front from Remy giving her tour, which just kind of fits in nicely for exposition. The spooks don't take long to happen at all. Lots of supernatural stuff, which I love. I really enjoyed the characters and their dynamics. There's this old lady named Marjorie who's a powerful medium, and she was just like fantastic. She was so confident and in tune with the energies in the house and is very central to the stuff that goes on in their investigations. And there's actually a lot of like informational stuff about ghosts and spirits in the book. Many of the people in the group are passionate about the paranormal, so like they know their stuff in terms of like ghost hunting. I just had a lot of fun reading this. And it did make me like a little scared at times, which was perfect. This does have a happy ending, kind of surprisingly so, based on how things go. And I could see maybe some people not loving how it ends because it's like kind of a happy ending, but I enjoyed it. It has a pretty high rating for a horror book. It's like over 4 stars. So I think that most people do actually like it. And I would read more by the author. Little Eve by Catriona Ward. This is a historical cult thriller that takes place in the early 1900s off the coast of Scotland, and you're mainly following a young girl named Eve who lives in this secluded castle called Altnahara along with a handful of other people, and they all worship this being, this sea serpent that they call the Adder, who they believe blesses them, protects them, gives them certain powers, and they believe that he will soon bring about the end and rebirth of the world. You're also following one of the others whose name is Dinah in the future after everyone at this castle was murdered by Eve. And it's the story of what happened at Altnahara that led to this massacre, showing how Eve and her family lived their lives under essentially the rule of this man that they call Uncle. And this was 5 stars, which I'm just so pleased about because I've now read 3 books by Ward and have given every one of them 5 stars, which is crazy. And similar to her other books, this is a psychological thriller, psychological horror, rather than just being like overtly scary. And this was fairly slow paced, very atmospheric, beautiful writing, just a slow reveal of how brainwashed these poor girls are and what happens when they dare to kind of question and challenge their circumstance. And the suspense slowly builds over the course of the novel because you know how the stuff in the past ends, or at least you think at first. And then you learn more and more and you become less certain of what happened. You have unreliable narrators, sometimes unlikable as well. There's just some fucked up things going on here that I will not spoil, but it's a book about the power of blind faith and delusion, and about survival, about manipulation and control, and about family. I'd say, maybe check content warnings if you need that, but I really enjoyed this. I'd say it's slower and less like heart pounding than the other 2 books that I've read by her, but still no less fascinating, and another 5 star. The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, narrated by Gisela Chipe. This is a historical fiction with sci-fi fantasy elements that is a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. And you're following 2 perspectives in this. You're following Carlotta, who is the titular daughter of Dr. Moreau, and a man named Montgomery, who takes a job as a caretaker of the doctor's experiments, which are human-animal hybrids. And they all live at this isolated estate, and trouble disrupts their routine when funding for the doctor's research starts to run low and questions arise. This was a 3.5 star, very luscious and atmospheric writing, but honestly, I don't have much to say about the book now that it's over. I haven't really thought about it since. The narrator was fantastic. It was a great audiobook, and I liked Carlotta and Montgomery. There's a good deal of romance elements in this, though not necessarily between the 2 of them. And the hybrids are constantly there through the story for that kind of sci-fi fantasy element, but it wasn't fantastical or exciting enough for me. And that's kind of what happened with Mexican Gothic as well. I just want more fantasy, sci-fi, horror than what Moreno-Garcia really gives in her writing, I think. I'm not super into history, which is a big part of her world building in her books, the history element. And this is my 3rd book by her, and I haven't loved any of them. They're all 3.5 stars, actually. So they're all good, but not things that I super really enjoy. So I don't know. Kind of a bland review, but there's just not much in this that stood out to me after I finished it. I did meet the author a couple years ago at a local event, and she signed a few books for me, including this one. It's downstairs in the library, so I'll be keeping it for now because it is personalized to me, but if I didn't have a personalized copy, this would be an easy unhaul. But the cover is absolutely stunning. I love the colors and just the composition, the vibe. It's just beautiful. Tooth and Claw by Jo Walton. This is a historical fantasy that takes place in a Victorian era type setting that follows the siblings in a respectable family in the aftermath of their father dying. And the fantasy twist, though, is that all of the characters are dragons. They are dragons, and it's tradition that when a parent dies, their family devours the body, which enhances their physical strength. And everything kicks off when the father's body is not consumed in according to his last wishes, and one of the siblings decides to take the one responsible for this to court over it. And this was 4 out of 5 stars, a very unique dragon fantasy. It's a slower pace, following the lives of these siblings as they deal with like class struggles, religion, romance, and societal pressures and expectations on both male and female dragons. And there are, of course, many similarities to human struggles and experiences, but also things unique to dragonkind. And you just like never get the chance to, forget that these are dragons. Like, they sleep in caves on a pile of their wealth. They eat raw meat. They don't wear clothes, because that's silly, of course, but they do put great importance on style and the style of hat that they wear. They do wear hats, which is adorable. There are all these rules around like when it's appropriate to fly, who is allowed to fly, things like that. The world building it's casual, but you're constantly learning just these little tidbits about dragon society, and each little bit that you learn is very fun and clever. There are some very uncouth villain characters, a few different romantic situations. It was an entertaining read. And I think that this might be a good one for someone who doesn't read fantasy, but enjoys historical fiction, and wants to maybe dip a toe into fantasy. And I guess also the other way around. Like if you're a fantasy lover who hasn't read much historical fiction and might be interested in checking that out. So it was a fun read. And the last thing that I read this month was an audiobook, and it was for How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler, narrated by Jeanette Illage. And this is about a woman named Davi, who was somehow magically transported from our world to a fantasy world where she's destined to save the kingdom from the evil Dark Lord. And she has been failing at that task for hundreds upon hundreds of years. And every time she dies, she wakes up again on the day that she was first teleported to the kingdom and has to start all over again. And she is the only one who remembers anything of what happened. And one day she just goes like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm sick of this. I'm gonna try and become the Dark Lord myself, because the Dark Lord always wins. So I'm gonna become the Dark Lord. And thus begins her journey of trying to gather up a horde of followers made up of these non-human creatures called wilders, and traveling to the Convocation to attempt to become the Dark Lord. And this was 4 out of 5 stars. This book is like 100% not for everyone. Davi is very Deadpool coded in her like speaking to the reader, in her crass sense of humor, her snark and her sass, which some people will not find funny. They'll find it immature, too unserious, which I totally get. But if you enjoy that kind of tone and humor, this was a lot of fun. There's a good bit of violence, obviously. You see Davi die multiple times, but she does eventually build up a rapport with the Wilders, and of course, they view humans as the enemy, so Davi has to kind of, change her tune there. There's a simple magic system involving these gemstones that imbue certain powers. It's a pretty straightforward story and plot. So if you want something where, you don't have to untangle like a bunch of complex themes, this is a good one. There were times, where the tone became a bit much. It is relentless, but it was funny and charming. There were some compelling relationships that develop that I enjoyed. The audiobook narrator was really good and, really leaned into it. And I will be continuing on to the second and final book in the duology. And those are all the things that I read in November. Thank you very much for joining me and bearing with me while I film in my non-normal setup. I do think that the microphone sounds very good though. It sounds very different than the lav mic that I normally use, and it's very comfy being able to just sit and chill in my office, which I love. I love this space very much. I just recently finished reading Nosferatu by Joe Hill. Which is like horror, but it also gave kind of Christmas vibes. Christmas is kind of a theme. That was very enjoyable. Just finished writing a review on that. I am currently reading the first book in a fantasy series. It's called Dark Water Daughter. And I only have like an hour and a half, like less than an hour and a half left on the audiobook, so I'll be finishing that very soon, and that's been very good. I've read a lot of high-rated books lately, so that's been really fun. I'm trying to read books that have kind of a cold, wintry vibe, I think I'm going to start reading a very short book by Susanna Clarke called, I think, The Wood at Midwinter. So that's very wintry. I may try possibly and get to Victorian Psycho, which takes place, I believe, in the wintertime. But I'm also waiting on a hold from the library for our book club book for the month, which is not winter themed, but it's called The Lesser Dead, and it is a contemporary vampire story. So vampires are very cool. I'm looking forward to that. Those are the things I'm kind of reading lately. It's December. It's firmly in the middle of the month, but the weather here has been crazy warm. It has also been very windy, probably because of the change in temperature and pressure and all that stuff. It's not snowing whatsoever. It's quite warm, but trying to keep myself in the holiday spirit. The house is decorated, looks nice. Trying to wrap up my Christmas shopping. So I hope that you guys are having a good December. Hope you guys enjoyed the reviews, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.